The Great Thousand Worlds, Futu ancient clan. At the center of the vast and imposing hall stood a gigantic stone tablet, its surface faintly tinged with a dark red hue. Ancient runes covered the stone, emitting mysterious waves and shimmering with spiritual lights of varying intensities. This stone tablet, known as the Spiritual Vein Monument, was an extremely important object in the Futu ancient clan. It was said that this tablet could detect the spiritual veins within the bodies of all clan members who possessed Futu blood. Additionally, whenever a new member was born and their spiritual vein manifested, the monument would react, emitting different spiritual lights as a signal. Around the stone tablet, over 100 figures sat cross-legged. Each held a jade brush in one hand and a jade slip in the other, their eyes fixed intently on the spiritual vein monument. By observing the fluctuating spiritual lights, they could determine the rank of the spiritual veins. The Futu ancient clan had flourished since ancient times, and although bloodline control was strict, the clan now boasted a vast population, with countless members being born every day. These newborns and their spiritual veins would always be detected by the spiritual vein monument. Before the monument stood an elder, hands clasped behind his back, the master of the spiritual vein hall. At this moment, the master of the spiritual vein hall gazed at the tablet and waved his hand, asking, "How many spiritual veins have manifested today?" A steward behind him immediately responded respectfully, "Master, today over 10,000 spiritual veins have appeared, with 8,000 being human veins, around 2,000 earth veins, and 32 heaven veins." The master of the spiritual vein hall nodded slightly and said, "Investigate the families of these 32 heaven veins. They may enter the inner clan for training, and their respective clans should provide them with resources and rewards." The stewards behind him all took note. A heaven-grade spiritual vein indicated excellent cultivation potential, and with proper nurturing, these individuals would become elites within the Futu ancient clan. Hence, they were given great importance. This also reflected the profound foundation of the Futu ancient clan. In other places, if an infant was found to possess a heaven-grade spiritual vein at birth, they would be regarded as a genius and given the utmost training. The total number of divine veins born this year is only 5, and all are at the lowest 7-fold divine vein. Compared to previous years, this is a decrease, said the master of the spiritual vein hall with some regret. Although heaven veins were still impressive, for the Futu ancient clan, only divine veins truly mattered. While possessing a divine vein didn't necessarily guarantee entry into the heavenly supreme realm, it greatly increased the likelihood of success. Behind him, others nodded in agreement, murmuring, "It's been a long time since a divine vein has appeared. The last time the 7-fold divine veins manifested, they nearly brought down the entire spiritual vein hall." The master of the spiritual vein hall smiled. "Such events only happen a few times a year. If you're lucky enough to witness one, consider yourselves fortunate." The others laughed and nodded. Indeed, divine veins were incredibly rare even for a clan as powerful as the Futu ancient clan. If recorded, those who documented it would receive rewards that others would envy. "All right, continue your observation carefully. No mistakes allowed," said the master of the spiritual vein hall, seeing that the spiritual vein monument had stabilized. With a final wave of his hand, he prepared to leave. However, just as he turned, the spiritual vein monument, which had been standing silently in the center of the hall, suddenly trembled. The next moment, the crowd watched in shock as a colossal pillar of spiritual energy erupted from the tablet, like a volcano. The entire hall seemed to be swept into a storm. Some people, caught off guard, were flung away by the force, and the hall descended into chaos. The master of the spiritual vein hall quickly turned back, channeling his spiritual energy to resist the impact of the light, his eyes wide in disbelief as he stared at the column of light erupting from the monument. So much power in the spiritual light. What kind of spiritual vein has manifested? He wondered in shock. The last time the Futu ancient clan's spiritual vein monument had caused such a disturbance was when the esteemed Qin Yanjing was born, and the 8-fold divine vein had shaken the entire clan. What unnerved the master even more was that the current disturbance seemed even more terrifying than the 8-fold divine vein. Could it be the legendary 9-fold divine vein? The mere thought of it made the spiritual vein hall master's scalp tingle, and his heart nearly leapt out of his chest. The ninefold divine vein was almost a legend, and throughout the history of their Futu ancient clan, the appearance of the ninefold divine vein had been so rare it could be counted on one hand. Boom. As the spiritual vein hall master and his companions looked on in shock, the spiritual light bursting from the spiritual vein monument grew increasingly violent, finally shattering the hall's dome with a resounding crash, shooting straight into the sky. The noise immediately attracted countless curious and puzzled gazes from within the Futu ancient clan. Swish. At that moment, as the spiritual light broke through the hall and shot toward the clouds, the space beside the spiritual vein hall master twisted, and an elderly figure with a head of white hair stepped out, his eyes fixed intently on the spiritual vein monument. "Greetings, elder." Upon seeing the white-haired elder, the spiritual vein hall master trembled and hurriedly prepared to bow, for this man was none other than the highest authority in the Futu ancient clan, the first elder, Futu Chen. In the Futu ancient clan, only the clan leader and the first elder could bear the title of Futu. In recent years, with the clan leader's position left vacant, only the first elder could use the name Futu. Futu Chen merely nodded at the spiritual vein hall master before turning his full attention to the spiritual vein monument. Swish, swish. At this moment, the space inside the hall continued to warp, and figures began to emerge, stepping through the air and into the hall. These were the elders of the Futu ancient clan, each holding a lofty position. Yet, even they were visibly shaken as they stared at the overwhelming spiritual light pouring from the spiritual vein monument. "First elder, what is this?" one of the elders asked in a hushed tone, his voice filled with astonishment. Futu Shen's eyes never left the spiritual vein monument, and after a long pause, he slowly nodded and spoke each word carefully. "This is the ninefold divine vein." Wow! At these words, the other elders in the hall couldn't contain their shock and gasped in disbelief. The ninefold divine vein. How many years had it been since it appeared in their Futu ancient clan? The appearance of Qin Yanjing's eightfold divine vein had been a monumental event in the past, unmatched in its power. After Qin Yanjing demonstrated his extraordinary talent, he even reached the realm of a spirit array grandmaster, leaving the world in awe. And if the eightfold divine vein was already so terrifying, how much more powerful could the ninefold divine vein be? If properly nurtured, it was possible that their Futu ancient clan could once again produce a saint-grade heavenly supreme, a piece of news that would undoubtedly be a great boon for them. The only question now is, which lineage does this ninefold divine vein belong to? The gazes of the many elders flickered. Among them, the two most powerful factions, the Xian lineage and the Mo lineage, had already begun to devise plans to investigate. If the master of the ninefold divine vein turned out to be an ordinary clansman, they would immediately bring him into their respective branches. If necessary, they would arrange a marriage with a direct bloodline to ensure that the ninefold divine vein stayed within their control. The disturbance from the spiritual vein monument lasted for an entire incense's time before it slowly began to fade. Though the monument had calmed, the hall remained in chaos, a cacophony of voices. Eventually, it was Futu Chen, the first elder, who regained his composure. He swept his gaze around the room and spoke in a deep voice. "Immediately investigate all bloodlines within the Futu ancient clan. We must locate the master of the ninefold divine vein. Once found, bring him into the inner clan and treat him as our Qilin child, giving him the highest level of training. I know that each of you has your own intentions," he continued, his voice growing colder. "But let me make this clear. If anyone dares to interfere with this matter, no matter which faction you belong to, I will not show mercy." His shout reverberated through the hall, and though his body appeared hunched, an overwhelming aura of power erupted from him. Under this pressure, even the other elders of the Futu ancient clan shuddered, their hearts filled with awe as they responded respectfully. After the elders were properly intimidated, Futu Chen nodded once more and said, "All of you may leave for now. In 2 months, the grand event of our Futu ancient clan, the Bloodline Tournament, will take place. By then, the major superpowers from the Great Thousand Worlds will come to witness it. Make sure to organize it well, and don't let our Futu ancient clan's reputation be tarnished. Yes, Elder. At the same time that the many elders of the Futu ancient clan were shaken by the appearance of the ninefold divine vein, within a secluded space that exuded an ancient aura, a graceful figure sat silently. Around her, the space twisted and pulsed with spiritual light, forming intricate spirit arrays. Suddenly, her tightly closed eyes snapped open, and a deep joy bloomed in her usually tranquil gaze. She pressed her jade-like hand against her chest. As in that brief moment earlier, she had clearly felt a slight tremor, a pulse originating from her bloodline. She gently sensed it, and soon realized what it was. The eightfold divine vein she had once left inside Mu Chun had been refined. Elder Qing Yinjing's expression shifted slightly, and then a deep sense of relief and pride appeared on her face. This joy was even stronger than when she had reached the great Grandmaster realm all those years ago. Mu Chun, my child, have you finally reached this point? She smiled warmly, but then a wave of heartache washed over her, for she knew well that no matter how astonishing Mu Chen's talent was, reaching this level would undoubtedly require countless life-or-death trials. Her jade hand tightened slightly as she murmured, "Since my child has reached this step, I must also be prepared." A glimmer of anticipation appeared in her eyes because she could feel that the day they would reunite was drawing near. The upheaval in the ancient heavenly palace's heavens and earth lasted an entire month before it gradually began to dissipate. As the turbulence faded, a burst of billions of sacred lights suddenly erupted from the mountaintop. Among the countless spiritual lights, a tall figure slowly stood up. When he rose to his feet, it seemed as if the heavens and earth themselves rumbled with thunder, and an indescribable pressure enveloped the area, causing countless cultivators around the heavenly river to tremble under the weight of this oppressive force. Sensing the overwhelming pressure, the tall figure flicked his sleeves, and the lights retracted, finally merging back into his body. The terrifying pressure also dissipated. As the spiritual light faded, Mu Chen's slender body and handsome face became visible, his pair of pitch-black eyes as deep as the starry sky, unfathomable. 100 meters away, the profound Heaven Elder gazed at the newly emerged Mu Chun with a complex expression. His eyes still held traces of shock, and after a long pause, he sighed deeply and said, "I never expected the Manor Lord to possess the legendary ninefold divine vein. No wonder he could reach the Heavenly Supreme at such a young age." There was an unmistakable sense of envy in his words, as he fully understood what the ninefold divine vein represented. Mu Chun only smiled at this, giving the profound Heaven Elder a deep look before saying, "I hope Elder Xiantian will keep this matter confidential." The profound Heaven Elder had clearly been involved with certain members of the Futu ancient clan in the past. If the news were to spread, it would take away one of Mu Chen's trump cards. The profound Heaven Elder, hearing this, nodded solemnly and said, "Please rest assured, Manor Lord. As an elder of the Mu Manor now, I will naturally not do anything that would harm the Manor Lord." Mu Chun was slightly surprised by the elder's attitude. Although he had previously subdued him and forced him into becoming an elder of the Mu Manor, the profound Heaven Elder had clearly been reluctant and showed little respect. But now, his demeanor was genuinely like that of an elder. Sensing Mu Chen's surprise, the profound Heaven Elder gave an awkward smile. While he had once harbored some fear of Mu Chun, it was far from the respect he felt now. After discovering that Mu Chun possessed the ninefold divine vein, he was truly shaken. With such a top-tier divine vein, the future Mu Chun might very well reach the peak level of the Saint-grade Heavenly Supreme. To show reverence for a future Saint-grade Heavenly Supreme was nothing to be ashamed of for the profound Heaven Elder. "Hee, I wonder what kind of spirit vein divine ability the Manor Lord has evolved this time." The profound Heaven Elder fixed his gaze on Mu Chun, clearly very curious about Mu Chen's spiritual abilities. Mu Chun smiled faintly, extending his finger and lightly pointing. At the tip of his finger, a purple flame appeared and drifted toward the profound Heaven Elder. Seeing the purple flame coming toward him, the profound Heaven Elder dared not be careless, as he could faintly sense the dangerous aura within it. Immediately, his body trembled, and a thick spiritual energy barrier formed around him. The barrier was as solid as substance, with formidable defense, enough to block a strike from a Saint-grade Heavenly Supreme. Whoosh! The purple flame gently fell, but as it came into contact with the spiritual energy barrier, it expanded rapidly, like oil meeting fire. It erupted into a raging fire, engulfing the barrier. The defensive barrier of the spiritual energy barrier, which had an astonishing defense, was rapidly dissolved under the burning of the purple flame. The purple flame grew even more fierce, crawling like maggots on bones, and surged toward the unprepared Profound Heaven Elder. This scene left the Profound Heaven Elder horrified. Clearly, he hadn't expected his defense to not only fail to block the attack in an instant, but to actually fuel the purple flame, causing it to burn even more fiercely. Whoosh! As the purple flame roared toward him, he quickly opened his mouth and unleashed an enormous spiritual energy tidal wave. Just a single drop of this tidal wave weighed as much as 10,000 kilograms, for each drop was composed of incredibly pure spiritual energy. When this wave swept through, even the vast mountain range would be leveled. The powerful, unmatched spiritual energy wave collided with the purple flame, producing a sharp, sizzling sound. However, the terrifying sight that shocked the Profound Heaven Elder occurred. The seemingly weak purple flame not only survived the sweeping tidal wave, but actually grew fiercer, turning from a small flame into a massive inferno that covered the area. What kind of flame is this? How could it be so domineering? Profound Heaven Elder's face darkened, and a trace of fear flickered in his eyes. He could feel that the vast spiritual energy within his attack not only failed to extinguish the purple flame, but actually made it burn even hotter, as if adding fuel to the fire. Clearly, this purple flame had a terrifying ability to absorb spiritual energy and grow stronger. At this rate, this fire was nothing short of eerie. If it tangled with him in battle, it was hard to say how much effort and energy would be needed to deal with it. Just as the purple flame was about to engulf the Profound Heaven Elder, Chen suddenly moved his mouth. The purple flame was sucked back, transforming into wisps of flame that surged into his mouth and were swallowed. As the purple flame entered his body, Chen's expression shifted slightly, for he noticed that as the purple flame dissipated within him, a stream of pure spiritual energy flowed out, merging into his body. I didn't expect this purple flame to actually return the absorbed spiritual energy. Chen smiled. This purple flame is indeed extraordinary. No wonder it's a spiritual ability derived from the eightfold divine veins. Master, where did this fire come from? Profound Heaven Elder, now snapping back to reality, couldn't help but exclaim. This fire is my spiritual vein divine ability, which I call the spirit-devouring purple flame. Chen replied with a smile. Spirit-devouring purple flame? It certainly lives up to its name. Profound Heaven Elder nodded repeatedly, his eyes filled with deep caution. Had Chen not recalled it, the purple flame would likely have made him extremely embarrassed today. Truly worthy of the ninefold divine veins, a spiritual vein divine ability that's truly extraordinary. Chen smiled upon hearing this, but didn't elaborate. After all, the spirit-devouring purple flame was merely the spiritual vein divine ability he acquired after refining the eightfold divine veins. He had yet to reveal the spiritual vein divine ability of the ninefold divine veins. Now that the Profound Heaven Elder had only just joined, there was no need to reveal all of his trump cards. Whoosh! While Chen and Profound Heaven Elder were talking, a series of streaks of light suddenly shot from the distance, landing on the mountain peak. It was Mandala, Ling Shi, and other high-ranking members of Mu Manor. When they saw Chen unharmed, they all sighed in relief, clearly having been keeping a close watch on the celestial upheaval caused by Chen within the ancient heavenly palace. Chen smiled when he saw them arrive and pointed at Profound Heaven Elder, saying, "From today onward, this will be our manor's first elder. If I'm not around, Elder Profound Heaven will be in charge of protecting the manor. As for past grudges, let's consider them resolved." During the month of Chen's training, Mandala and Ling, she had already seen Elder Profound Heaven as a protector of the manor, so they were mentally prepared. They all nodded to Elder Profound Heaven. Although there had been some grudges between them before, Having a heavenly supreme level figure to protect the manor was undeniably crucial for its safety. I was reckless in the past. I hope you all won't hold it against me. Elder Profound Heaven said with an awkward smile, his posture unexpectedly humble, lacking any hint of arrogance typical of a heavenly supreme. Mandala and the others were taken aback by Elder Profound Heaven's apology, feeling somewhat surprised. After all, they were well aware of the disparity between themselves and a heavenly supreme. The only reason he had deigned to become their manor's elder was due to Chen's presence, and they assumed he probably looked down on them. As they were taken aback, Elder Profound Heaven couldn't help but smile bitterly to himself. Had he not discovered that Chen possessed the ninefold divine veins, he never would have shown any friendliness toward these people in Mu Manor. However, it seemed that Chen's future was boundless, and he might even step into the realm of the saint-grade heavenly supreme. At that level, such a powerful peak expert was someone he could never afford to offend. Under the humble demeanor of the Profound Heaven Elder, the senior members of Mu Manor were slightly taken aback, feeling both honored and surprised. After all, the Heavenly Supreme usually held a lofty position and would never speak to them in such a manner. As a result, the atmosphere between the two parties quickly eased. Chen smiled faintly upon seeing this. Although he knew this was done for his sake by the Profound Heaven Elder, the gesture was thoughtful enough to make him feel satisfied. As the atmosphere relaxed, Lingxi approached with her bright, clear eyes, gazing at Chen. She spoke softly, "I've gathered some information. Several top-tier forces have received invitations from the Futu ancient clan. If I'm not mistaken, it should be the Bloodline tournament hosted by the Futu ancient clan." The Bloodline tournament. Chen's expression shifted slightly. Before his retreat, he had asked Lingxi to pay special attention to the movements of the Futu ancient clan. Yes, it's a grand event held every 10 years by the Futu ancient clan. It's incredibly important, so they always invite several powerful forces to witness the event. Chen nodded slightly. His main purpose for heading to the Futu ancient clan was to rescue his mother, and during such a grand event, the greater the spectacle, the better it would be for him. Of course, the Futu ancient clan was a deeply rooted ancient force. Even though he had now reached the heavenly supreme realm, he still had to make preparations and plans. Chen lifted his gaze, staring at the distant rolling clouds. He then slowly closed his eyes. "Futu ancient clan, you've been looking for me for years. This time, let's have a proper contest." Half a month later, outside the main hall of Mu Manor, many senior members had gathered. Chen stood with his hands behind his back. After a while, he turned around and looked toward the front of the gathering, where Mandara and the Profound Heaven Elder stood. "After I leave, Mandara will still be in charge of Mu Manor. If any external enemies come, perhaps we'll need to trouble Elder Profound Heaven to make a move," Chen said with a smile. The Profound Heaven Elder chuckled and cupped his hands in salute. "Rest assured, Manor Master. Now that I'm an elder of Mu Manor, I'll fulfill my responsibilities." Mandara also nodded slightly, her bright eyes fixed on Chen. She whispered, "Be careful." Although Chen had already reached the heavenly supreme realm, and even she looked up to him, she understood the true purpose of his trip. The Futu ancient clan, one of the 5 greatest ancient clans in the Great Thousand Worlds. Such an ancient clan had an unimaginable depth of power, and even a typical heavenly supreme would be cautious in the face of such a behemoth. Chen nodded with a smile. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Of course, he was well aware of the Futu ancient clan's power, but he had his own plans for this mission. "Let's go." After giving his instructions, Chen didn't linger. He turned and spoke to Lingxi and Longxiang. Both of them had spent some time in the Futu ancient clan, so having them along would help avoid some unnecessary trouble. Lingxi and Longxiang nodded in agreement. Chen walked into the teleportation spirit array in front of the hall. Lingxi and Longxiang followed closely behind, and the 3 of them stood within. Powerful spiritual energy began to converge. The brilliant spiritual light filled their vision, and Chen raised his head to gaze at the distant void. He muttered softly, "Futu ancient clan, I'm coming." Since the day he left the northern spirit realm, he had been working toward this moment, enduring countless hardships and life and death trials. However, those trials had borne fruit. The young boy who had once left the northern spirit realm had now reached the pinnacle of the great thousand worlds, stepping into the heavenly supreme realm. And now, the grievances of these years were about to reach their resolution. The dazzling spiritual light surged, and in the next instant, the figures of Chen and his companions vanished from the teleportation spirit array. Futu continent, one of the supercontinents in the great thousand worlds. As a supercontinent, it should have been filled with countless powers. However, on Futu continent, there was only one force, the Futu ancient clan. Named after the Futu, it was clear that the Futu ancient clan viewed this vast and boundless continent as their own territory. However, such dominance did not bring about any dissatisfaction. Because they were the Futu ancient clan, one of the oldest and most powerful forces in the great thousand worlds. They had both the qualification and the strength to claim an entire continent as their own. In the central region of the floating Pagoda continent stood a towering and magnificent city, Floating Pagoda City. This city marked the very center of the continent. As the central city of the Floating Pagoda continent, Floating Pagoda City had never lacked in popularity. However, recently, its popularity had reached its peak in the past decade. This was due to the arrival of numerous superpowers from all directions, eager to witness the grand event of the Floating Pagoda ancient clan, the Bloodline tournament. At the heart of Floating Pagoda City, a grand mountain stood tall, atop which was an immense square. At this moment, countless beams of light descended from the sky, filling the square with a vibrant and bustling energy. As expected of the Floating Pagoda ancient clan, this kind of appeal is truly unmatched, said a young man with an air of elegance, who stood at the edge of the square, watching the scene with a faint smile. The three figures in question were none other than Chen, Ling Shi, and Long Xiang, who had spent over half a month journeying from the Tianluo continent to get here. Chen was particularly reflective, for he noticed that nearly every wave of light descending from the sky carried a powerful and awe-inspiring fluctuation that stirred the very heavens and earth. Without exception, the individuals emanating such waves of power were all heavenly supremes. In other parts of the great thousand worlds, such beings would reign supreme over entire territories. But here, they appeared somewhat ordinary. Only those invited by the Floating Pagoda ancient clan can attend, which means most of the top-tier superpowers of the great thousand worlds are here. There are even several slightly weaker superpowers that came on their own, hoping to form good relations with the Floating Pagoda ancient clan. Ling Shi spoke softly from beside him. Perhaps our Mu Manor is one of those slightly weaker superpowers. Chen chuckled. His Mu Manor had only just entered the ranks of superpowers because of his presence. If it came to the strength of their foundation, they were probably weaker than many other superpowers present. Long Xiang snorted. If our matron were here, our Mu Manor would have a presence comparable to a saint-grade heavenly supreme. That would place us among the top-tier superpowers in the great thousand worlds. Chen shook his head with a smile, and then looked up toward the towering mountain in front of him. Above it, a massive spatial gate shimmered with light, leading into the Floating Pagoda realm, the heart of the Floating Pagoda ancient clan. That was the true core of the Floating Pagoda ancient clan. All the members of the Floating Pagoda clan on the continent were considered branch clans. Countless branch clan members yearned desperately to enter the Floating Pagoda realm and be recognized as part of the main clan. Outside the spatial gate, enormous spirit boats continuously traversed between the two realms, occasionally landing on the vast square to pick up guests and transport them to the Floating Pagoda realm. The gate was protected by a powerful array, and only the spirit boats of the Floating Pagoda ancient clan could pass through. Even a heavenly supreme would not be able to force their way in. The threshold for entering the Floating Pagoda ancient clan is no small matter, Ling Shi said, her beautiful eyes scanning the area, her brows slightly furrowed. According to the rules of the Floating Pagoda ancient clan, the spirit boats would only first carry those superpowers with invitations, while those like them, without invitations, would have to wait until the very end. This practice, though displeasing to some superpowers who had come on their own, was something they had to swallow. Well, we'll just wait. We're not here to deliver congratulations, Chen said with a faint smile, his expression calm. But his black eyes stared intently at the spatial gate, a chilling light flashing in the depths of his gaze. "Young master, is it really appropriate for us to come here to the floating pagoda ancient clan?" Long Xiang hesitated, a note of concern in his voice. After all, he was well aware of the floating pagoda ancient clan's attitude toward Mu Chun. If his true identity were discovered here, even if Mu Chun had reached the heavenly supreme realm, he might not be able to escape. Mu Chun smiled lightly and said, "Don't worry. I'm not walking into a trap." Seeing Mu Chen's composed and calm attitude, Long Xiang relaxed slightly. He knew Mu Chen's character. If he hadn't made the proper preparations, he would never have placed himself in such a dangerous situation without thinking it through. Just as they were speaking, a brilliant stream of light suddenly appeared from the distance in the sky. Finally, several beams of light descended, landing in the square, drawing the attention of many eyes. When the light faded, a stunning and enchanting figure appeared in front of everyone, immediately drawing a wave of amazed gazes. The graceful figure, dressed in a bright red gown, perfectly showcased her delicate and alluring figure, radiating a fiery, eye-catching aura. Her bewitching face, with its seductive gaze, seemed to exude an enchanting charm that made one's heart waver. However, despite her alluring beauty, her pair of phoenix eyes appeared slightly cold. The blend of icy elegance with her seductiveness created a unique, captivating allure. Even some of the heavenly supremes present, who had seen their fair share of tumultuous events, couldn't help but steal a few extra glances at this mesmerizing woman. But when their eyes fell upon the flaming patterns on her red gown, their expressions immediately hardened, and they subtly averted their gazes. This flame pattern was a symbol recognized across the great thousand worlds, representing a supreme, top-tier power that even the Futu ancient clan dared not overlook. The Boundless Fire Domain. To think even the Boundless Fire Domain has sent someone. They've never participated in the Futu ancient clan's Bloodline tournament before. I wonder what brings them here this time. Some figures whispered quietly. The red gown woman's alluring figure paid no heed to the many gazes focused on her. She led her group directly to the center of the plaza. There, the reception deacon of the Futu ancient clan had spotted her, and immediately his expression changed. He suppressed the haughty demeanor he had shown toward others, and quickly replaced it with a smile, hurrying over to greet her. However, just as they were about to meet, the woman's cold phoenix eyes swept over the crowd. She suddenly paused, and then, to everyone's surprise, a look of astonishment flickered across her icy face, followed by a smile. Without further delay, she gently dismissed the approaching reception deacon of the Futu ancient clan, walked toward the edge of the plaza, and stopped before a handsome young man. "Mu Chun, you really came." Mu Chun looked at the alluring and cold woman before him, and a genuine smile appeared on his face. "Xiao Xiao, long time no see." The woman before him was none other than the long-missed Xiao Xiao, clearly here representing the Boundless Fire Domain. Seeing Mu Chun, Xiao Xiao's usually cold and aloof face softened considerably. She smiled, then stepped aside to reveal the person standing behind her. It was an elderly man in a white robe, his sleeves fluttering gracefully. His face was aged, radiating a sense of kindness. His deep, wise eyes reflected the wear of time, as if he had witnessed many eras. Xiao Xiao linked arms with the elderly man and smiled at Mu Chun. "Mu Chun, this is my master, my father's teacher." Mu Chun was instantly shaken. He stared in awe at the elderly man, realizing that the great Flame Emperor, renowned throughout the great thousand worlds and revered by countless powerful beings, had been trained by this very elder. His heart stirred, and his expression grew serious. He bowed respectfully to the elderly man. "Younger disciple Mu Chun, greetings, senior." Facing the elderly man with kind eyes, Mu Chun didn't dare show any disrespect. He cupped his hands and bowed deeply, his expression solemn. To be able to train someone like the Flame Emperor was a testament to the extraordinary nature of this elder. "Huh, old man Yao Chun." The white-haired elder chuckled warmly. "It seems we are fated to meet, as both of our names contain the character Chun." The elderly man looked at Mu Chun with a gentle smile, his eyes scanning him up and down. "A heavenly supreme at your age is the youngest I've encountered in many years. No wonder Xiao Yan often speaks of you, saying you're no ordinary person." "Flame Emperor Senior, You overpraise me. Mu Chen smiled modestly, without the arrogance often seen in young, successful people. He glanced at old man Yao Chen. Although the elder appeared extremely frail, Mu Chen could subtly sense an oppressive force emanating from him. It was clear that this elder was an authentic, immortal, grade Heavenly Supreme. This was even higher than Mu Chen's own spirit, grade Heavenly Supreme. However, Mu Chen wasn't surprised. After all, this elder had trained the Flame Emperor, and with the support of the Boundless Fire Domain, it was only natural that he would possess such immense power. That said, Mu Chen was more curious about Xiao Xiao standing beside him. He could sense an incredibly powerful energy emanating from her, one that rivaled his own. Have you also stepped into the Heavenly Supreme Realm? Mu Chen stared at Xiao Xiao, slightly surprised. The last time they met, Xiao Xiao was stronger than him by a margin, but she was still far from reaching the Heavenly Supreme level. To see Mu Chen accomplish such a leap made him wonder how many grand opportunities he had gone through. But to his surprise, Xiao Xiao was able to catch up as well. This really caught him off guard. What's the matter? Is it only you who can be a genius in this world? Xiao Xiao responded, her beautiful eyes widening slightly, letting out a soft hum. Mu Chen gave an awkward smile, while Yao Chen, standing by, chuckled and explained, if you compare cultivation time, Xiao Xiao's far ahead of you. She's been practicing for several times longer than you. However, due to her unique physique, she falls into deep slumber periodically. Every time she wakes up, her strength increases. Just recently, she slept for an entire year, and when she woke, she had already entered the Heavenly Supreme Realm. Mu Chen gasped in amazement, staring at Xiao Xiao with a strange expression. He never imagined that such a thing could happen. Just sleeping and waking up in a higher realm? He had never heard of anything like that. Compared to her way of breaking through, his own method, facing life-and-death struggles just to make a narrow escape, felt utterly pitiful in comparison. What are you looking at? Seeing the odd look in Mu Chen's eyes, even Xiao Xiao's usual cold beauty flushed slightly, a little embarrassed and annoyed. Mu Chen gave a dry laugh and quickly looked away, then introduced Ling Shi and Long Xiang, who were behind him. While the atmosphere between them was warm, many powerful forces in the square were watching them with peculiar eyes. Clearly, they were speculating about the identities of Mu Chen and his group. After all, anyone who could be treated with such respect by the Boundless Fire Domain couldn't possibly be an ordinary person. Whoosh! Just as various factions were speculating, a series of piercing sounds suddenly came from the sky. Dozens of figures descended from the heavens, landing directly in the center of the square. As the figures landed, a formidable presence spread out, causing the previously bustling square to fall silent for a moment. All eyes turned toward them. There were about a dozen individuals, and the leading figure was a tall man, exuding the presence of a dragon. He wore a black and white robe, exuding noble charisma, and his eyes were a striking black and white, exuding an otherworldly aura. When the crowd saw the unique black and white robes, surprised whispers began to spread. So, they're from the Mo-Ancient clan. No wonder their presence is so imposing. The Mo-Ancient clan was one of the 5 great ancient clans of the Great Thousand Worlds. The man with the black and white eyes paid no attention to the gazes of awe from the crowd. He walked as if he were a king traveling, unbothered. The reception deacons of the Futu ancient clan immediately rushed forward. With a wave of their hands, a grand, luxurious spirit boat, the highest grade of spirit vessels, descended from the sky. Only the most esteemed guests could enjoy such a boat. Mo-Ancient clan, huh? At this moment, Mu Chen's eyes were fixated on the powerful group, his gaze flickering. He remembered that the Mo-Ancient clan controlled the complete form of the eternal undying body. Now that his immortal golden body was nearing perfection, he would undoubtedly have to visit the Mo-Ancient clan in the future to complete the final step of his transformation into the true, eternal undying body. Just as Mu Chen's thoughts crossed his mind, he suddenly felt a shift within him. A surge of purple golden light began to ripple in his body. His immortal golden body seemed to be on the verge of fully manifesting. Startled, Mu Chen quickly suppressed the energy. His expression grew serious as he turned his gaze toward the man with the black and white eyes. He sensed that the disturbance in his immortal golden body was caused by this man. At the same time, The man with the indifferent face and the black and white eyes, who had been walking forward, seemed to sense something. His steps halted suddenly, and his piercing gaze turned toward Chen. Their eyes met, and for a moment, both felt a tremor in their blood and energy. Chen narrowed his eyes, growing even more cautious. He felt a trace of cold, hostile intent radiating from the man with the black and white eyes. This guy, he's actually cultivated the immortal golden body. Chen was slightly shaken, because the strange sensation between them clearly originated from the fact that both had cultivated the same supreme Dharmakaya. However, the ancient clan possesses the complete cultivation method for the eternal undying body. It's not surprising that someone within their clan could cultivate the immortal golden body. Chen's gaze flickered as he muttered to himself. As Chen was lost in thought, the man with black and white pupils seemed to snap back to reality. He immediately turned to Chen, his eyes filled with coldness and mocking superiority. Interesting. I never expected to encounter a wild path cultivator of the immortal golden body here. In ancient times, the ancient clan inherited the cultivation method of the eternal undying body from the first supreme being of antiquity, the immortal emperor. Over the years, the ancient clan had considered themselves the true heirs of the eternal undying body, looking down on and suppressing those who cultivated the immortal golden body through other methods, fearing that one of these wild path cultivators might rise up and claim the eternal undying body for themselves, stealing it from the ancient clan. Thus, when the man with black and white pupils realized that Chen had also cultivated the immortal golden body, hostility began to emanate from him. The man's eyes gleamed with cold light, and he was already planning to have Chen's background investigated. However, when his gaze suddenly fell upon Xiao and Yao Chun standing next to Chen, his eyes narrowed sharply. People from the Boundless fire domain. His expression darkened, a trace of wariness flashing across his face. Then, his gaze shifted, and with a flick of his sleeve, he turned and walked away. Ancient clan people, they're always so unpleasant. Xiao coldly snorted, watching the retreating figure of the man with black and white pupils. Who is this person? Chen asked. The man had cultivated the immortal golden body. If he ever went to the ancient clan to compete for the eternal undying body, he would surely become his formidable enemy. His name is Yu, and he's the brother of Tian, the clan leader of the ancient clan. Yao Chen spoke up. Tian. Upon hearing the name, Chen's expression grew serious. Tian was also well known throughout the Great Thousand Worlds. Tian is a man of immense ambition. Back in the day, he even tried to annex the recently founded Boundless fire domain. In the end, my father intervened, fought with him, and defeated him. Since then, the ancient clan hasn't dared to touch the Boundless fire domain, Xiao explained. Chen nodded slightly, recalling that he had heard of this event. It was because of that victory that the Boundless fire domain became one of the most powerful forces in the Great Thousand Worlds, with no one daring to provoke them. The Heavenly Emperor once told me that I need sufficient strength and backing before I can challenge the ancient clan for the eternal undying body. It seems he was right. Without enough strength, even if I am fated to obtain the eternal undying body, it would be impossible to take it from the ancient clan, Chen thought to himself. He had once hoped that it might be possible through peaceful means, but after seeing Yu today, he knew that obtaining the eternal undying body would not be a simple matter. We should head into the floating pagoda realm as well. Xiao glanced at the growing crowd in the plaza, the stares they were receiving starting to annoy her. She immediately said. Chen nodded, having no objections. Just as they were about to depart, Chen suddenly noticed a group of lights descending from the sky. He couldn't help but smile and said, "Wait a moment, here comes another familiar face." As Chen's voice fell, the group of lights landed beside them. A slender jade arm extended from the glowing light and wrapped itself around Chen's shoulder without hesitation, accompanied by a lively and melodic giggle. Hee hee, Chen, long time no see. Have you missed me? Hearing that clear, cheerful laugh, Chen also smiled. He knew immediately who it was. Besides Lin Jing, who else could it be?